I don't know what it is. I've shared this before. It's been about 2 years since both my parents passed away. And for like 2 years, I've been in like a cloud, a dark cloud. And it finally feels like, okay, I'm getting a second wind. And I'm excited. And you know, having my dad pass away, and after 2 years, it's kind of given me this sense of boldness. Like, you know, I want to preach the word, and I want us to be the church that God intends us to. Because all of us, in some time, you know where we're going? We're going to go meet our Maker. Is that true? And I want all of us to be able to say, we gave it our best. We messed up, we screwed it up so many times, but we gave it our best, God. Right? Isn't that what we want to say? And along that line, we've been looking at passages from the Gospels that tell us the story of Jesus' life and his ministry, and how Jesus did ministry. And when we look at Jesus' life, we know that Jesus loved people. Jesus just loved people, and he had compassion for them. That's why he would feed them, he would heal them, right? He said, hey, stop chasing away those kids, bring them too, I love them too. I love everybody. Bring the lepers, bring the prostitutes, bring the criminals, the tax collectors, the traders, I love them all. Bring them all here. Jesus loved to celebrate life. Do you remember the first miracle in the Gospel of John where it happened? It happened at a wedding banquet. Jesus loved to celebrate life. And I really believe he intends for all of us to live well, to live fully. And that's why he says, I came that they may have life, and that they may have it what? Abundantly, overflowing. That's the kind of life that Jesus wanted us to have. But just like some of the people, as I said last week, that were following Jesus because they heard Jesus say, hey, whoa, Jesus is feeding people, let's go. I know people like that. When there's a free meal, they're there. Right? And they were following Jesus. And they said, hey, free meal, and we get to watch a show. Jesus is healing people. That guy with the cane who couldn't walk before, now he's walking. That woman who was blind, now she can see. Ooh, when you get a meal and a show, right, you're there. I think sometimes, just as some people who were following Jesus were confused, that sometimes we get confused about why we follow Jesus. So let me ask you, and for you to kind of think about this, why do you follow Jesus? Why do you follow Jesus? On top of that, sometimes I think we're confused about what it means for us to live well. This is a huge one. We're totally confused about what it means for us to live well. We get confused and we associate living well with, next slide, with things like having a lover. Oh, if I just had a lover in my life, I would be so happy. Right? Identifying ourselves with titles and positions. Manager, president, doctor, attorney, whatever title you're seeking. I still see so many people chasing after titles. Even if there's a good job right at their doorstep, they don't want to take it because it's a lower title. Or how about cars? We just want a good ride. If we have a good ride, life would be good. It would, look at the, oh man, okay. Life would be good. I would be living well. A lot of us associate living well with going on vacations, going all over the world. If I can go here, oh, that's living well. If I can go to Hawaii once a year, that's living well. Right? How about a big house? If I have a big house, I am set. That's living well. Or wealth. If I have this amount of money, or this amount of whatever, I'll be doing well. We have this confusion, this illusion, just like many people had when they were following Jesus. And in the Gospel of John, when Jesus told them what it means for people to follow him, and he started kind of laying it down, and it wasn't easy. He said, you got to have me in your life every day. You got to choose me every day. And people were like, oh my gosh, we got to eat the flesh of Jesus and drink his blood. That was last week's passage, right? Ooh, what? I don't understand. And we're going to pick up there. In John chapter 6, when he says, many of his disciples heard it. They said, this teaching is difficult. Who can accept it? But Jesus, being aware that his disciples were complaining about it, said to them, does this offend you? Does this make you stumble? Then, what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But among you there are some who do not believe. For Jesus knew from the first who were the ones that did not believe. And who was the one that would betray him? And he said, for this reason I have told you that no one comes to me unless it is granted by the Father. Because of this, I love this. Because of this, many of his disciples, and he doesn't say strangers, he said, because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. So Jesus asked the 12, do you also wish to go away? Wow, I love that. Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom can we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God. I love it right at the end how Jesus puts the question to his disciples. He puts the question to all the disciples. Are you still going to follow me? Who am I? Where are you going to go? I want to remind you guys about the story of Joshua. When Joshua stood at the edge of the promised land, Joshua spoke to the people and he said, you know, before we go into the promised land, God wants me to tell you something. And he says, God says this. Do you remember Abraham, who once lived beyond the Euphrates with his people, and he worshipped and served other gods? Then I took your father Abraham and led him and gave him many children. Do you remember how I gave your father Abraham a son in his old age? And his name was Isaac. And to Isaac I gave more sons, and their names were Jacob and Esau. And to Esau I gave the highlands, and to Jacob I gave the lowlands. When my people were slaves in Egypt, they cried out. And do you remember I sent them Moses and Aaron? And I brought my people out of Egypt, out of slavery. Do you remember when you fought against the Amorites and I was with you and you were victorious? Do you remember King Balak when he wanted a priest Balaam to come out and curse you? Good thing that donkey saved his life, because when he came out, he couldn't curse you, but instead he blessed you. When you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho, and people fought against you, and you looked at the walls, and the walls were strong and they were high, and people came out, and they fought against you, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites. Girgashites? Yeah, the Girgashites. Oh, the Girgashites, they were big. The Hivites and the Jebusites. In other words, everybody was fighting against you. And do you remember? I was with you, and you were victorious. And when you circled the walls of Jericho, and you sang, and you blew the trumpets, do you remember how the walls came tumbling down? And now, you are already living in homes of my promise. You are already eating the fruits of my promise. Things which you do not deserve. Then Joshua looked at all the people, and he said, now, I want to ask you guys, worship the Lord. Serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods of your ancestors and the gods of this world. Choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And you know, the people, after having heard this, they were like, well, God, you remind us of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, of all the people that fought against us, and we were victorious. And people are like, well, all right, well, we will worship the Lord also. What do you think Joshua said? Joshua said, no, that's not happening. He said, no, you will not worship my God. You will not serve my God. If you're going to do it like that, forget it. And Joshua said, my God is holy. My God is a jealous God. And I know, with that kind of attitude, when you get into the promised land, you're going to chase after other gods. You're going to chase after other things, and you're going to forget God. He says, no, you will not serve my God. Just forget it. And the people say, no, no, no. We will serve the Lord. And we will be our witnesses of what we say today. And I believe when we gather as God's community, we are our own witnesses. We've got to hold each other accountable to our gathering, to the words we speak, when we say we will serve the Lord. Will you serve the Lord? Or why are you following Jesus? We need to be able to make that statement. Today, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. But that's not always easy, is it, when we go out those doors? And I really think that's what, when Paul wrote to the church in Ephesus, he reminds them, and he says, finally, you know, when somebody says finally, you know there's something good around the corner. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his power. And he gives them advice. And he says, put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, against the desires, against the trickery of the devil. For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers. I love this part because in our time, we got to be aware of this. We're not just struggling against individuals, but Paul says, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil. Isn't that incredible? You have powers in your life that are trying to pull you away from God that you do not even realize. For me, one of the greatest powers in my life that pulls me away from God, because I love TV so much, I love TV shows. Especially since we don't have cable. If there's something good on TV, I am on it. Right? But along with TV shows, what comes along between the show? Some commercials. And I look at those commercials and go, oh, wow, look at that car. If I just had that, I would be so happy. Oh my gosh, if I drank that beer, all those beautiful women would be around me too. Right. Right? What are the powers in your life that are constantly pulling you away in your relationship with God? And he goes on, right? He says, put on the belt of truth, put on the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes for your feet that will make you proclaim the gospel of peace. Put on the shield of faith, put on the helmet of salvation, put on the sword of the Spirit. And he says, put all this on. Every morning, I believe, we've got to choose to put this on. I love last week when Susan Miller came up to me after the breakfast worship and said, yeah, I find myself in that same situation where I've got to choose every morning. I wake up and right on my lamp table, there is the Bible in my devotional and then my iPhone, her agenda and her games. And she's got to choose every morning. How is she going to fill her day? How is she going to start her day? All of us, we've got to choose each day what we're going to choose to put on. What our day's going to be like. And as Paul draws this image of this soldier putting on all of his equipment, right at the end, in verse 18, he says, no matter how prepared you may think you are for that day, no matter what you think, about